state certification. If you don't do that, post is the only one that can do that after a hearing. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
resigned, now he's finding out. So they're all getting sued.
Well, I'm surprised their town manager, Ted, allowed that to happen.
But he's right in the middle of it now, for sure.
I bet he is.
I've been sending it to our guys and saying, see how this could be. You need to cherish what you got right here.
That's right.
My friend just texted me from Seattle and wants to know what I'm doing, so I'm going to send him a picture.
This is what I'm doing.
Boyd said he thought he saw you.
Okay. It's nice. Hey. Hey, Amy.
Back home before I forget it.
How's your arm? Coming along? Good. Call to order our Signal Mountain Town Council Monday, September 9th regular meeting. We'll begin with the pledge, followed by the invocation by Signal Crest United Methodist pastor Josh Kilburn. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for the gift of another day. Every day is a gift. We thank you for the gift of our community, and we thank you for our leaders here tonight. We pray that you would lead them, give them wisdom, and we just pray for each and every one of us that you would help us to live our lives for the betterment of others and to make this world a better place, the place you want it to be. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks everyone for coming tonight. We have an unusually high thespian count, so we're going to start with the citizens' opportunity to address their soliloquy towards the council. That was a joke. Oh, want roll call? Let's do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Randy Speak. Here. Councilmember Cheryl Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch.
Here.
Mayor Dan Landry.
Here. Now you can soliloquy. Does anyone, you have 3 minutes. The opening speech from Fiddler on the Roof is only about 2. You could get that in. Anyone? All right, we'll close that, which moves us on to resolutions.
No, proclamation.
Proclamations. Did you
have a
change the order?
The proclamation was originally on the agenda as a resolution.
Okay, so I'm
but
looking at the
it
old
came
one.
in as a proclamation, so we put it ahead of the resolution.
Let's redo that then. All right. Do you mind if I stand for this, because it seems only proper? And everyone else stand as well, because I think we should. We're honored tonight to participate in this. And Rosa, you can come up as soon as I'm done. This is a proclamation from the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee. Whereas it is right and proper to honor men and women whose life work influences, inspires, and entertains us. And whereas for over 50 years, Glenn Ray Showalter has volunteered thousands of hours, serving in every role imaginable at the Signal Mountain Playhouse for nearly 100 Playhouse productions, building literally from the ground up the stage on which residents perform, and sets that transform the center of our town into portals of imagination. Whereas we are the benefactors of Glenn Ray Showalter's work, enjoying Signal Mountain summer nights laughing and crying under the Playhouse lights, while listening to choruses of favorite show tunes backed by a bandstand of local musicians and the creaking of a million cicadas. Whereas countless actors cherish gifts of thoughtfully crafted Glenn Showalter art, Glenn also bestowed the town with a lasting legacy of 6 beautifully illustrated pen and ink coloring books. And whereas Glenn Ray Showalter has now relinquished his Playhouse duties for retirement with his wife Izzy in their home in New Jersey, we wish to honor him tonight. Now, therefore, the Town Council of Signal Mountain, Tennessee does hereby commend and thank Glenn Ray Showalter for the great and wide-ranging contributions he has made to this community and its citizens. And in honor and recognition of his work, and as a testament to exemplary community shaping public service, the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee, does hereby proclaim September 9th, 2019 is hereby designated and shall be Glenn Ray Showalter Day in the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee, proclaimed and conferred this 9th day of September 2019. You be seated. And Glenn, you're welcome to speak if you'd like.
Come up here for a second. Thank you.
Come to the mic, please. And you need to say your name and where you live.
My name is Ann Rosa, and I live in Walden. As a member of the Signal Mountain Playhouse Board, we would like to give you a gift from all of us. This gift is kind of like carrying coals to Newcastle. We have a quilt for you, Glenn Ray. And it's made up of t-shirts, as many as we could get together in one place. And carrying coals to Newcastle is because all of this is artwork that Glenn has done over the years for various and sundry plays. So when you wrap yourself in the quilt, wrap yourself in love from the Playhouse.
I just have a few words. First of all, thank you. I really do appreciate the honor. And Signal Mountain has been home for over 50 years. And I'll never forget, I'll be back. I will continue to be involved with the Playhouse if they allow me to be. And if the teenagers back in 1972 after they did the great cross-country race. If they had said, okay, that was it, I guess this wouldn't have happened, but they came back the next year and said, let's do it again. And then again. And then again. For the next 40 years, we tried to give a venue for teenagers especially, something to do in the summer to stay out of trouble, because the combination of time, money, transportation is a lethal concoction for some people. And I think we've achieved our goal, and hopefully we'll continue to achieve a goal of having a lot of participation for the kids and teenagers and a few parents. So I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn.
Can't really clap.
Do you need a photo or anything?
If you want, would you present it?
Yeah, let's do. Yes, yes. Can all the council come down?
I guess I could have gone the other way.
We gonna have to duck or something. Now maybe we'll be out.
This one. Trust me, I'll let you know. All right, we all in? Tell us when.
So you want us to scoot over a little bit this way?
Whose camera are we looking at?
You're right now. Now, here. I've got it.
Oh, boy.
So even this on our folders is a wall. Thank you. Let's see what I can get out of order then. Okay, so now we'll move on to proclamations.
Let's
Getting
some more.
Our first resolution tonight is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute a memorandum of agreement between the town of Signal Mountain and the Signal Mountain Elementary Preservation Fund for the completion of a capital improvement project to install an HVA system in the auditorium/theater of the former Signal Mountain Elementary School building. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to read this by now. Boyd, do you want to just give a synopsis of what, and I guess Harry as well, what went into putting this together?
Yes. A while back, the Preservation Fund sent a letter to the town requesting a cooperative endeavor to put the HVAC into the auditorium. And in terms of the level of cooperation they asked was simply fronting some funds so that the project can move forward quickly, be done more cost effectively, and then ultimately they would reimburse the town for the funds contributed to the project to that end. After that, we had discussion with council about the general premise, and then drafted the agreement and had Harry review that. And the way it's set out is that we'll initiate the preliminary agreement, and then we'll have to have it engineered, put it out to bid. Once the bids come in, we know what the actual prices are. There will be an addendum to the agreement. Council will come back to council for additional review, choose to move forward, then we'll do so. But there are some, for lack of a better term, safety valves along the way to make sure that we're not getting in too far ahead of ourselves in the process on either side of it. So again, we've in looking at how we can proceed with this and do so safely, this is what we've come up with.
So over what length of, let me back up. We're agreeing to front money for the project, but we're not agreeing to an amount yet. It's to be determined?
Yeah, correct.
And if the amount is too high, do we have the option to step out of this agreement?
Yes.
Okay, over what length of time are they obligated to pay the town back?
It's by the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, and where are we getting the money?
Public fundraising. They've already raised.
No, the town, are we taking it out of the general fund, the reserves? Like, how are we fronting the money?
That would be an
That-
accounting question, but I would say,
Yeah, if we don't displace anything else that's already budgeted, we would ultimately do a budget amendment and take it from fund balance. And then in that same budget amendment, we would budget revenue from the contributions from the preservation fund.
But it would be returned back to the
It would go
fund,
back to the general fund,
to the
yes.
general fund, okay. Do we have any idea how much?
well, they've
Do
already
we have a
raised
roundabout?
$38,000. It's probably going to be somewhere between 52 and 56,000 in that neighborhood. So,
Okay.
in that neighborhood. Do we have a motion? We don't have a motion yet.
So
So
moved.
Mr. Mayor, let me
Yes.
point out one thing. I looked back at our ethics requirements, and you need to disclose what you've already disclosed before, but it needs to be disclosed at the hearing where a vote is taken so that that gets into the minutes. Doesn't mean you can't vote, just needs to be out publicly at the meeting where a vote is taken.
Okay. My wife is the president of the Preservation Fund. So there's my disclosure.
That's fine.
Yeah. All right, so we have, go ahead, Carol. No? We had a dual first down here.
Well, I seconded that. Yeah.
So Susanna first and Bill seconded. So now discussions. Anyone have specific concerns about this? Where one of the reasons to do it this way as opposed to just wait until all the money is in is to try to have the auditorium back in action by this fall so the Playhouse can use it again.
Makes sense to me.
I would say that the circumstance is, and by that I mean the fact that this money is going to be used to improve a town asset, is really what gives me a little bit of comfort. If this were any other scenario where we were assisting another nonprofit, even if it was a community-based, community benefiting project, I would have far more concern about it. But ultimately, this money's going into our facility. So that, and I have no doubt that the agreement will play out as planned, but the bottom line is this is an improvement to our asset.
It's going to seem like a strange question coming from me, but what assurances, why do you think that this is not a risk?
Didn't say that.
Okay.
I said the comfort comes from the fact that all the money, whether it's ours or theirs, is going into our facility. And that makes it a little better scenario for the town.
So if we get to the end of the fiscal year and the money isn't raised, what happens?
What are does the town fund the MAC in any way? You've got some
Yes.
control there.
It's departmental, has a departmental budget.
So if we're not paid back to taking it out of the general fund, we just wait until they get, like, that's what I'm kind of getting at. What assurance, what happens if they can't raise the money that we front by the end of the fiscal year. We just absorb that, or we wait and, like,
No,
I
I don't
would
think
think
so.
we
I
wouldn't
mean-
enter into an agreement without having those kind of safety nets.
Well, there is no guarantee that they will pay it back. As Boyd said, it is a risk. As he's pointed out, it's a benefit to an asset that belongs to the city. But if they don't pay it, if it's not paid back when it ought to be paid back, then the council at that point's got another decision to make. Do we force repayment in some way, or does the council decide that the benefit to the community and to that building is sufficient to not force repayment? But that's
But look,
hard.
it sounds like we wouldn't, I'm not even saying we would do that. I think these are important questions to ask. How would we force the repayment?
Well, how does the town fund MAC now?
Well,
I mean,
MAC is a town function. The Preservation Fund exists separate and apart from MAC.
That's right.
And they serve to support the efforts to preserve, protect, improve the building and the grounds, not the MAC programs. So they're related but not directly connected, but, and this is certainly Harry's area, but they're a legal entity, just like any other corporate. They're a 501c3. And if they're in a position to enter a legally binding contract, then we have the same repercussions, avenues of recourse that we would with any other organization. I certainly don't see that happening.
I
but-
don't see, I
but
mean,
I don't see that happening
I don't
either,
think
but.
these are people that are our friends and our neighbors, and they put thousands of hours of sweat equity
And dollars.
and their own money into this project. In fact, one person is sitting up here with us who's really put a lot of sweat equity into it.
And
So-
dollars.
And dollars.
And
And so
dollars.
I feel like if anybody is deserving of a little credit, I'm very comfortable with this arrangement. They've already been able to raise $38,000 in
Well,
a year.
that's just
Right,
towards
but they're
this.
important questions to ask.
No,
We owe
no,
that to
I
the
understand.
community,
I
because not
started-
everybody is as supportive outside. And so I think if we're going to make a decision like that, we need to back it up and ask the right questions and then make
I
a
do
decision.
too, but I also
So-
think you can justify it by some of the points that I'm making as well.
Right.
Do we know about how much money the Preservation Fund has put into the MAC so far? Yeah. If you get a chance, everyone should go by and take a look at all of the rooms and all of the actual physical improvements that are taking place. So the group is, I would be nervous as well if they didn't have a track record of actually doing the work and raising the money and paying for things. So
Sure, I don't
it's a
think-
legitimate question.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not questioning any of the aesthetics or the amount or the hours that have gone in. I think I'm asking important questions that,
And-
I think
Frankly,
there
I
will
agree
be an agreement that is enforceable and that the town could file suit if necessary. That's a decision.
right, but
That could be done if needed.
And that, frankly, is kind of why I said what I did on the front end. I wanted to phrase it in a positive light, but we do need to consider these things.
Yeah.
And have these conversations about the advisability of anything like this, and I agree completely.
Well,
I just
not-
have one more thing.
Sure.
I don't know if anybody has thought of this, and again, I'm just asking questions to talk about. Is anyone concerned about setting a precedent of like fronting money to organizations that are town assets as well, like baseball fields or lacrosse fields or things of that nature? Because I feel like if we, and I'm not saying we don't agree to it, I'm just saying we need to be playing this tape all the way forward, and that, we may have other great organizations or places that the people use, the town of Signal Mountain, that are going to be coming to us, tennis courts, that we're going to be fronting the money. So that's something to consider too, that we could be setting a precedent.
that is possible, and we, along those same lines, we have actually agreed to partner in projects, like the batting cage. The baseball league came up with funds for the cages, and we paid for decided to pay for the slab and the site work and all of that. So it's not that this is fully out of the ordinary. It is a higher dollar amount than we generally deal with, but
Well,
these things
so
have
was
come
the,
up.
I think it was 650 that we've given to the MAC already. That's a high
No,
dollar
that's
amount, too.
for an
Or
asset.
350.
For an
Yeah.
asset.
Yeah,
So are the batting cages.
yeah.
Yes.
That's the only point I wanted to make. I don't have anything else.
All right, you guys ready? Any other comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Carries 5-0. Next, we have a DRC appointment. This is a resolution appointing Jeremy Rardin as a member of the Town of Signal Mountains Design Review Commission. And we've had this for a couple of weeks. Really not much explanation that needs to take place in the front of this. I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous? 5-0.
Did we approve the minutes? Do we need to?
There
approve
weren't any
them?
minutes.
Huh?
There weren't
Oh,
any
none. Okay, I
All right.
didn't read that all the way through. Thank you.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing the award of a contract to Wright Brothers Construction Company, Inc. for the paving of certain streets and trench repair within the town in an amount not to exceed $575,949, and authorizing the town manager to execute any necessary documents in connection with this award. And the next, well, you can probably answer two here. The next couple have to do with roads. And one question I ask, if you can just give us an update on what we're looking at this year.
Sure. It's in the list. It's fairly extensive. It's, as it says, 4.25 miles. We have Acacia Place, Alder Place, which are over on near South Palisades, Brady Point, Fern Trail, Laurel. A lot of these are where the water projects were done. So they were cuts and repairs were made, but generally those degrade pretty quickly. So the best time to come in and pave those is while that's in good shape. You get a top coat over the whole road, and it'll ultimately last.
So
a
most
lot
of these are the
longer.
places where there's that long extra
Right.
black top strip
Right.
going down the
Right.
on Laurel.
Maryland, from the 5-way down to Mississippi, Signal Mountain Boulevard. There's also that trench repair that needs to be done from an old sewer project. So that will all be torn out, replaced, repaired, and then the road will be top coated there. Then roads over in Old Town, Mathis, River Point, Shoal Creek Falls. The remainder of that will be paved now that the bridge is done. South Drive, Signal Point Road, South Palisades. Again, a lot of these are those that were damaged from the water projects but repaired. From the town side, from the state street aid side of things, our best bet is to go ahead and get a top coat on them. So, the initial bid involved those roads. And as you'll see, we have another resolution for council to consider because the bid came in under budget. And during the budget process, there was extensive discussion about adding more funds for paving to get caught up. And also the second resolution would allow additional work to be done with funds that are already budgeted for paving. So we optimize what we have budgeted this year.
Any idea, under budget is something we rarely hear on a bid these days.
Right.
Any idea what's changing?
No. The second bid, we only got 2 bids. These are the ones that generally will bid our projects. The higher bid was just a little under what we have budgeted, but Wright Brothers came in significantly below that. So because of that, I don't really know what motivated that. Timing for a company can have a big impact on it, but I can't tell you exactly because there was such a wide range in the two bids. Wright Brothers has done a lot of work for us in the past. They do an excellent job.
Do we have a motion?
I have a question.
Second.
We'll do the motion and discussion. No, she was saying
I had a
something.
question. I'll wait till
Do we have a
discussion, I
first?
guess.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Discussion?
So didn't we, and my math could be off, but weren't we, when we were doing the budget and talking about the tax increase, thinking that paving was going to be around $250,000 a mile? Was that what is that number, am I making that up?
I don't recall that.
We were worried about it going up in price, and that was one of the justifications for the tax increase. So we budgeted more money for paving, right?
Well, our paving amount was based on the amount that was submitted as the proposed budget.
How much was that? Wasn't it $1 million?
No. The budgeted amount is 730,
730.
and that's rounded, but 730,000. And again, the high bid on this was 712.
But didn't we add
Six.
another 332,000?
The 730 is the total.
That's with the added amount.
added.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just,
And this catches us up from last year. Some.
Right. The 4.25 is more than we have been doing, but again, with that one bid coming in significantly lower, and that's why I separated this out. I didn't include that in this bid. We authorize the work that's been bid, but I also wanted to create the opportunity for council, given the discussion that we wanted to get as much paving done as we could this year, and then those funds would be redirected to something else next year. Wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to optimize those funds this year, but that's ultimately your call based on what we bid out and the bids that we got.
I just have some concerns about optimizing funds when we've had such a huge tax increase. I would prefer to see us
Do you see something
decrease
that is not optimal here?
optimizing funds, so it came in under budget, which means technically we could put that money back into the budget and not do such a steep tax increase.
That's
Because the
already-
tax increase is every year. It doesn't go away. So,
Are you proposing,
it's discussion. I'm just saying, like, we had a very controversial budget session. Part of that discussion had to do with paving, because we were worried that it was going to be so much more and it was going to continue to go up every year, and it turns out it wasn't even as much as we thought. So I'm bringing that up for discussion. Is that what we want to do with it? Do we want to just go ahead and spend it to the max, or do we want to return some of that to the people that are upset about the tax increase?
how would you do that?
I don't know. I'd have to ask them.
The only
I guess not spend the money.
The only effect that would have would be to increase the fund balance at the end of this year. It wouldn't have an impact going forward.
Right, one of our primary functions in this role that we play is making sure our streets get paved. And we didn't pave last year, and so anything that helps us catch up on what we didn't do is probably a good thing. Now, does anybody else have any other suggestions, proposals? All right, so we're voting on the first resolution that involves paving at this point now.
Right.
We have a first and a second. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, that one carries 5-0. The second resolution involving paving is a resolution authorizing additional funds for the contract with Wright Brothers Construction Company, Inc., for the paving of certain streets and trench repair within the town in an amount not to exceed $150,000 to expand the 2019 paving project, provided all unit pricing remains consistent with the original contract, and authorizing the town and manager to execute any necessary documents in connection with this authorization. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So it sounds as if this one isn't necessarily agreed upon yet. The additional
With the company.
with Wright Brothers. They,
Correct. But generally, a paving contract like this, unit pricing is extended.
if you want to
And-
add some.
And as we go through, you might actually find a section of road that doesn't need, we can skip, or we identify a road that needs to be milled that we didn't anticipate. So through a project like this, when you're going all these different roads, it's somewhat fluid. And staff will be with them, working with them, and engaging exactly where we are on unit pricing and total contract and budget through that process. So extending that and doing additional work when they're already mobilized and they have their equipment up here, the likelihood is they will extend unit pricing and do an additional work. This just, without this authorization, we really can't even approach that, but I would be very surprised if they weren't willing to do that.
Do you know, you don't have to know this, but do you know how this unit price compares to the unit price from last year? Well, we
I
didn't-
do not.
We didn't have any last year, actually.
Right.
So it'd been 2 years ago.
We did the bidding last year, but we didn't award it. So I have not compared those two.
Okay.
This, we haven't had this in terribly long, and frankly, I just haven't thought to make
Yeah,
that comparison.
that's Other discussion? Any questions? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any
Nay.
opposed? Was that aye? Or was-
Nay.
That was a nay. One against. All right. We have no ordinances tonight, so we move on to the discussion section. And so this has been on here for a couple of weeks now, schedule of council work sessions, and this was on here because you wanted it, Amy, so. Let you,
Or you want to, oh, I was just wanting to talk about possibly bringing back the work sessions for the daytime. And just want to see where council was at. We kind of talked about it, so I guess for the audience, we used to do our work sessions at 12:30. And now that we have video capability, I feel like that's the obstacle of people not being able to watch it later or be a part of it has somewhat been removed. And I know for some of us, every other Monday is quite a bit with families in the evening. So I just wanted to talk about possibly bringing it back and see what you guys thought. This was a trial anyway, to do the nighttime one.
thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of flexible at this point in my life, so I can do evenings or during the day on Fridays. I can arrange my schedule.
I think we,
Either one.
Either one?
Yeah.
Do you have a preference, Bill?
Any day but Friday.
Any day but Friday, okay.
And I can arrange my schedule, not on Fridays. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be another day of the week. I don't really have a day that's
Yeah.
not.
I honestly, like, I've kind of come off of that anyway. We don't have to move it during the day either. Because Fridays would be probably the easiest for me. And it sounds like it would be harder for everybody else, so we can leave it. I'm happy to close the door on that for now.
Well, if it changes in the future, or something
We can
should,
look
we
at it
could, we
again.
could look at it again, not a problem.
Yeah.
If it becomes a burden for
Yeah.
anybody.
all right? Okay, to move on to the next one?
Go for it.
All right, so we're going to talk now about amending the municipal code, Title 8. This is our beer ordinance. And thank you to staff for putting in a lot of time on this so far. It might behoove us to just go through it, top to bottom. Are you guys?
Have you read it?
I have. Oh yeah, I've read it. I have a lot of notes.
You going to read the crossed out parts too?
No, I will not read the
Good,
crossed
okay,
out parts.
thank you. Yeah.
And there are copies in the audience, right? So folks
There
can
were
see
some
what-
out on the podium.
Okay.
Up front.
All right. So in the first section, 8-201, we don't have to read every word of this, but the second sentence after the title had added to it a couple of words. It said, before the beer board shall have the power and duty to regulate the selling, storing for sale, distributing for sale, and manufacturing of beer within the town, etc. Staff added to this, giving away and brown bagging. Why those?
We have in one of the other chapters, there actually, and again, you'll note that this is just chapter 2 of that title. In the other chapters, it does regulate brown bagging and the provisions associated with that. And according to the ordinance as it was listed, that's not one of the things that the beer board had authority over. So you're just cleaning up, and the brown bagging provisions were added several years ago, and I think it just wasn't
Didn't
thought
get
of. And then giving away, if it is a public organized event, even if they're not charging for the alcohol, especially if that's an event that might be on town property, wanted to make sure that council had the authority to regulate that as well.
All right. The next major thing added was under beer permit required for engaging in beer business. You added number 2 to that. Provided all requirements and applicable provisions of this chapter are met, a single permit for retail sales may be issued to allow sales for both on-premises and off-premise consumption. I assume this was just something that wasn't there and needed to be there.
It has always been allowed, but the wording in that section made it sound like that it was not allowed. And what they're referring to is you can't have a permit for retail and wholesale, or retail and distribution. So it's simply a clarification that you can get 2 permits on 1 permit if they're both for retail, and the 2 options for that are on-premise and off-premise. So it's just a clarification.
I know you guys are going to be hesitant to chime in because you're afraid I'm going to make it be too long anyway, but chime in as you have concerns. And Harry, if, stop us too, if do that lawyer thing. If we need that. The second one, the hours of sale restricted, 11 o'clock. How's everybody feel about that? So if we're having an event,
That hadn't been mentioned as a possible change, so the only thing I did in that section was divide it more clearly between
Yeah.
on-premise and off-premise.
that's just a note that I have. Does that seem?
Midnight?
That's 8-204.
No, I know where it is. Does that mean still purchase beer, or the event has to be over?
Still, it's purchasing after that point, just, or giving away. What's that?
I was going to say, or give.
Or give, yeah.
I actually think that's a little late. Baseball games, they stop at, what, 6:15, and then football, don't they stop there after halftime? No, fourth quarter. I'm trying to think time-wise, because we're up here on the mountain, and people are clearly driving afterward. To have your last year at 11?
I don't know, I think that,
alcohol volume?
I think we're dealing with adults though, and it's 2019 and they can get Uber.
That's why I want to bring it up. I had my 1 beer at 7, so this isn't something that affects me personally. But just wondered what other folks are thinking.
I only bring that up just for a topic, but I would be curious about other towns and maybe I'm way off thinking that 11 is late.
I think most of the ones we looked at are, this is consistent, aren't they?
A lot of the smaller municipalities, larger ones will go into
Midnight or 1.
2,
Yeah.
even, maybe even 3 o'clock.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking, yeah.
So they're,
Because if you're having a fundraising, if you're having a fundraising party that goes to 1 o'clock, it seems like midnight is reasonable, but most people up here don't stay up till 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we had
I don't think we had a time limit when we did the zombie run. That was the first one.
You did.
Yeah.
You did, you just didn't know it.
I know, we raised a lot of money for the school.
Yeah. So
the
does anybody,
key phrase was, that was in Walden.
yeah. Is there
We're
is there
good.
any desire to change this to 12?
I think we should change it to 12.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you note that? And what we're doing right now is not writing this in stone.
So it'd be 12
Yeah.
o'clock a.m.
Yes.
Yeah.
Depends on the
You
party,
can drink
I
for
guess.
1.5 hours. That's
Yeah.
it.
There was a change in 8-205, number 7, getting rid of drunk or disreputable persons to intoxicated persons.
That's such old-fashioned
It
sounding.
is great, yeah.
A lot of this stuff dates back
I mean, it should say like reprobates
many
or
many
something.
revisions. So it's one of those, while you're at it, getting into the stuff that we really need to address, some of those things just kind of jump out at you. So
Boyd, here's one of
Well,
those.
and I also have to mention the use of his premises.
I
and
saw that over and
his
over, yeah.
This and that all throughout, just, I
well,
don't know.
there's a statement in the code that gender is meant to be all inclusive.
Neutral.
Yeah,
Then we
something
should
like
say
that.
her.
Still hit, then maybe it should be her.
Yeah.
Or, I'm going to be quiet.
I'm being serious. I am not kidding.
I mean, and that's what I'm saying. There's a statement in there for that specific reason, because you're right. It is written
We
in
have to
large
change a
part
lot
as
of
it was
code.
written decades ago.
We might
And?
take that up later.
Yeah, we'd have to change thousands of pages of codes. Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you for volunteering there.
I'm not. That would be staff that does that. So this is one of those places, Boyd, where I think it ought to say beer. Number 8-205, serve, sell, or allow the consumption on premises of any alcoholic beverage with an alcoholic content of more than 8%.
I don't think we should say beer. Is it
Well-
malt liquor?
well,
Does that fall under beer?
There's other places for consistency within this code. This is the beer code, not the wine code.
No, I know, but isn't beer considered like the White Claw, the new thing everybody's drinking? That falls under beer, doesn't it? If they sell it in gas
I
stations.
think so.
You know, well,
So that doesn't prohibit people from, I call them malt liquor, I don't know what it actually is. Do you know what I'm talking about? That hard
It's
seltzer?
hard.
Yeah,
soda.
That will fall under beer. Are we protected?
What's the alcohol content of
It's not more than
that?
generally, I think what we have here, and we didn't get completely cleared up, and you see it in other codes too, is just a consistency with phrasing. And since this is the chapter that's beer, I think what we need to do is allow the consumption on his premise, beer or any alcoholic beverage.
Okay.
And that's the way most people are, because
Yeah.
there's been an expansion and these things aren't technically beer. So most of the codes are expanding, instead of taking beer out, they're just saying beer or any alcoholic beverage, and covers that.
Because there's another place down here where we're, there's a shortage of White Claw. Let's see.
And if, before we move off of that number, that 8%, we were talking before the meeting, that is consistent with state law at this point. High-gravity beers do have alcohol content higher than that, but that falls into a different category that the state retains control and authority over. So for us, that 8% mark is what we need to have.
I looked it up, and the national average ABV in 2010 was 4.5 or something like that, and it's now 7.5. It's changed that much. You know?
High gravity?
Yeah. All right. Number 9 is just added, except as otherwise allowed by state law, which seems like it ought to do that. Number 10 is completely added. Allow the premises to become a public nuisance or a nuisance to law enforcement agencies in the town of Signal Mountain, or materially contribute to creating or maintaining a public nuisance, or to otherwise interfere with the public health, safety, and morals. Is this something you guys picked up from other places? Just to
It's this, in this section, it appears in other sections, but it wasn't here.
Okay.
So it was added and really kind of moved. Let me see here if I'm.
And
There was a lot
condensed.
of, yes, condensed considerably. That is one of the sections, yes, if you look at what was 8-215, no, I apologize, 8-220. All of that was condensed and moved over
Oh,
to the
that-
prohibited acts.
Gotcha.
Because it was kind of in an odd place over by itself anyway, so.
Okay. All right, 8-207, under the privilege tax, number 2, you added any person, firm, corporation, joint stock company, syndicate, or association engaged in the business of was added.
Correct.
Before it just said engaged in selling beer. How does that differentiate somebody who's
The question came up for us as we were working through this, and we contacted ABC, and we looked at other codes, and 501c3s, folks that are selling alcohol for the purpose of raising funds to the public interest, aren't considered they're
In the
not in the
business of-
business of selling alcohol. They're in the business of raising funds for the public welfare, and they're selling alcohol as part of the means to do that. So that differentiates them from a business. And then the next change, the addition of the section 5 in that, clarifies the remainder.
which is, so section 5, moving on down to that in this. I thought you said that a lot of other towns had political organizations as well as 501c3s. Does,
Some do and some don't. The
And-
state says bona fide charitable or nonprofit organizations, which are 501c, whatever, or political organizations. That's what the state uses. Some municipalities copy that. A lot just say charitable organizations.
yeah, we
And-
don't have a lot of that here, I wouldn't think, so does it matter to you guys? I mean,
Being adjacent to, relative to us, a major city where a political party or organization would likely have an event in Chattanooga, not on Signal
Right.
Mountain, we didn't feel it was necessary.
All right, moving down, the next change is in 8-209, you changed the 5% to 8%, which is what we've been talking about. Nothing new there. Okay. The, is 8-210 necessary?
That's why there's a red question mark after it. I don't know.
Yeah, if for anybody who doesn't want to read that quickly, basically it says you can't have 3 cases of beer. You could have 2.99 cases of beer, but if you had 3.1 cases of beer, you'd be breaking the law. Is that just ours?
I don't recall. That was not one we spent a
Yeah,
lot of time on.
I don't know either. I want to say that it was in several small municipalities, but I'm not sure of that. I don't know the purpose of it. I bet you it's never been enforced.
Now,
I think that thing needs to be struck.
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
does say that it doesn't apply to individuals or groups that are having a non-recurring event or something like that.
Right.
So I think the intent was to further control someone's ability to break the other rules by saying they can't even have it on the premises, but
Right.
it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense.
Did
I'm fine
anybody
striking it.
not okay with striking that?
Oh, how many, this is long. Holy moly.
The, if you thought we needed some of it, I thought, maybe at least you drop the possession part. You could word it differently, but if we don't need it, it just seems
Take it out.
archaic. All right, moving down to 8-211, that was completely rewritten. This is important for us to understand because we are the beer board as council members. Beer board and town police to enforce the article. The town council, which constitutes the beer board for the town of Signal Mountain, shall issue permits and revoke or suspend licenses except where such action would be inconsistent with any specific provision of this article. The police officers of the town of Signal Mountain shall enforce all laws, ordinances, and rules regulating the sale of beer or otherwise contained in this chapter. So kind of my only question about that was, and it's going to come up again, if the beer board was unable to convene, it would put restrictions on things that people would be able to do. It's almost, I look at it almost like a zoning thing, like if somebody wants to petition the council for a rezone and the council just can't get together or whatever. I wondered about the ability for, and I could be way off base here, Harry, for the town manager to be able to do some of these things. Because it seemed in some places there were a lot of things coming to the council that the council's already voted on the code to allow to have happen. So it seems like the town manager, as long as people are abiding by the code, ought to be able to just say, yes, this is in compliance. That's a thought in reading through the whole thing. So
That kind of makes sense to me, too.
Well, is your question, can the town manager issue permits? MTS would tell you no,
Yeah, I didn't think so.
because that's delegating duties that the beer board is required to evaluate the applications, et cetera.
We only found one case, I think, where the city recorder maybe could issue a temporary permit.
Right.
So someone could, which to me seemed even more problematic. So if you were going to get a beer permit for a store, you could begin selling beer and then come to the beer board and get your permanent permit.
like if you'd done
So-
everything else.
So,
to
yeah,
open
so
your
now
store.
you've already got your inventory and everything else on hand, and you've started the process, but you technically don't have your permanent permit yet. So I think that's the only thing we found where there was anything other than direct issuance by the beer board.
I didn't think about the M-Test thing at all, but, okay. Anybody else? Anything else? There's another place in 8-214.3 that just refers back to, we're going to abide by state law. And 8-215-2, all that area that's been struck was addressed earlier. Moving down to 8-244 was added. Applications must be delivered to the town manager at the town hall at least 15 days prior to a meeting at which the beer board will convene to consider action on the application. And this is the one that scared me just a little bit. I mean, what if somebody wants to have something and the beer board doesn't meet? The town council doesn't meet because it's a holiday or for whatever reason. Does that mean they can't hold their event?
Can we have a special meeting? Does that have to be in the ordinance?
Or could you vote by,
No. That's frowned upon.
Yeah. Won't let us
We
do
can't.
anything like
The
that.
problem is the wording elsewhere is something we talked about last time, says that you cannot issue a permit until a public hearing has been held at a regular council meeting. So that is, not that it should have any impact, but that is one advantage to these regular twice a month evening meetings, there's 2 chances a month to get that in. And the reason I worded it the way I did on the 15 days prior to the meeting, that kind of speaks to that, is you're not really sure when somebody's going to come in, and if they come in 5 days before the next meeting, if you use the term next meeting, then we don't have time to do the background and all of that other stuff. So
Or to post
we
it.
have to have, wording it like that, we have to have 15 days before you guys can take it up for consideration. And if there's a meeting between that time, there just is, because we can't do the detective does the background check, calls the references, and it's a process. So that's the best we could come up with, that gives us at least 15 days.
Right.
It's on. Is it loud?
Anybody?
My microphone is on. You're welcome.
All right. Moving down to 8-240, number 6, had some words added. Notice of all applications for permit shall be given to the police chief, fire marshal, and building official.
This was just changing the wording that was there, as it was said that they were supposed to go to the town engineer and the fire chief, building official, and fire marshal. And so it's just actually cleaning up the language to exactly who does handle these things. It goes to the police chief, who delegates it for the background check, the fire chief, fire marshal reviews it, and then the building officials are the ones, if necessary, that do the measuring and make sure that the premises meet the requirements.
And
So
most of that would have been done on all these places.
this is
by then.
what we do, so it's just bringing it in line with actual practice.
All right, so now next to the, and interrupt me if I'm moving too fast, but now next to the next, or hit me if I'm moving too slowly. 8-243 had added to it, and this is a change. No permit for on-premises consumption shall be issued unless the business has a seating capacity of at least 25 customers and offers prepared food for sale during all hours of operation. That's a fairly significant change from what it used to say. It used to be 50, and that you had to serve lunch and dinner, correct?
Right.
So,
And this was one of the specific provisions that council indicated they wanted to look at and change in this direction, but we got no direction exactly how far to go. So that's why when I sent this out, said this is just a point to start the discussion. This would allow that wording if you wanted to go that small, or not so much, make it 30 or 40 or whatever. The other change in language would be, I think, a key to allowing something like a brew pub that might not be feasible to operate during lunch in this environment, and having to pay people to be there. It may actually be more productive to only be open from 3 till whatever. So just saying, as long as you're open, you have to provide prepared food. You can't just put nuts on the table.
That's my
And-
question. What's define prepared food? Like, how much food are they? I'm thinking of Atlee's Place, the coffee shop.
yeah, they've prepared food.
Yeah.
But what?
I mean,
What do we?
I think anything.
Can you sell
that-
prepackaged sandwiches? Can you sell wrapped
Could.
up cookies? They're prepared. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
Like, do we?
by
Are we
prepared-
defining that, or is that pretty loose?
I think probably the intent is the food is prepared on site.
Right. So
But
if they make a sandwich, that's fine. If they open a package that contained a sandwich, or give you that package, I don't see that as prepared food.
I'm not
And
sure. I
it's-
think that counts in some places if they microwave it. A lot of the sandwiches that you get at restaurants are done that way. I mean, they're,
Well, that's prepared
yeah.
in the microwave. I just wanted to make sure that we had,
Yeah.
that businesses like Mayfly have that type of flexibility. I'm not trying to restrict it, because I
This
don't have an
actually makes
issue
it
with
easier.
that. And that's why I just wanted to make sure that prepared food is subject, sounds like, to somewhat of interpretation.
Well, we can define that more clearly, and ultimately, it's again, y'all's comfort level.
I
as
prefer to
as
keep it
where
more
we end
general.
up, and that's, the idea of this was getting a point to start for the discussion.
Right. Did you come across, when you guys were looking at other code, this, was it normal to allow small businesses in small towns, small seating capacity?
I don't recall, a lot of the places didn't really have any
Any restriction
I
on
don't
that?
provision
recall
like
it
that.
either.
Did they have food? But there are, food provisions are common, because that's the difference between a bar and a restaurant.
Some places, the wording was that had to be in connection with a restaurant, operation of a restaurant or something like that, but they didn't define it as strictly as we did or do in our current code.
So,
So
Do we
have
need
the
the seating?
Is this in there so we can avoid like having just a bar up here?
Frankly, I think that was the intent on the front end, was so that there wouldn't be a bar. And I think at the time, that was fairly practical. The idea of a bar and what that entailed 30, 40 years ago and what we think of as a brew pub or something like that now are two completely different creatures.
Yeah.
And it's on his premises.
Yes. it is
Remember
on
that
his
bar we
premises.
were avoiding?
Yeah.
I think that. I don't know. I don't know that it matters.
I don't think it matters.
I think that's just kind of. I mean.
I think tiny movements are advisable. Going from 50 to 25, that allows a pretty small business to open up. The seats and having some food. The way that the prepared food, I mean, you could have somebody who comes in and opens up a cupcake shop that wants to sell craft beers because cupcakes are prepared food. If they're making cupcakes.
Well, look at the
there.
nail places are serving wine. I don't think that's necessarily, if they want to open up a cupcake place to bring your kids in, then you can have a beer. Why would we prohibit them from doing that?
I don't know.
Then they're going to have
Maybe
25
just take the word
seats.
prepared out and just say food.
Then it's a bar.
Then you have a bar.
So the question is, do
Now,
we
I'm
want
not
to
saying
allow
there's anything wrong
bars
with
up
that. I'm
here?
just saying.
It's not a bad thing.
Again, we were trying to find
I know.
let's rein
Yeah.
it in a little bit, but a starting point for discussion.
we need it.
These five folks give the direction.
Well, the fact that we can't even agree on what prepared is, I mean, you can,
No, you might as well just. take the word out.
prepared food could be a bag of nuts. It's prepared by someone, it was packaged by someone, but it's not prepared on site. If you want it prepared on site, then we need to spell that out. a
Could you
little
look for
more.
some clarification on that, maybe from some other municipalities?
But do we
I mean,
want that? I mean, I don't want that prepared
I don't
on
think
site.
it-
I
no,
think we're
I'd rather not,
restricting,
yeah.
we're trying to
But if that's what
What we're
they
trying to do
want.
is
encourage
stimulate
business, yeah. exactly.
Businesses and investment.
Really?
Let me go ahead and
I mean-
write Gail Perry's headline for tomorrow. Signal Mountain considers putting in bars on every corner.
She wouldn't say every corner. They'd have to have 25 seats. Susie, Signal Mountain is open to having a bar on Signal Mountain.
I don't think we should do that.
What, you take out prepared food?
I think we need to leave it in there for now. I think this is a pretty big step, and I was the one who originally suggested we consider lowering this, and the purpose of this was business development, so that we made smaller businesses
Yeah.
to be able to go in, not so that we put in bars.
Well, I don't have a problem with reducing the number at all, it's just,
And food, but food is the distinction.
yeah.
And
And that's, I mean, it's not a matter of, in this instance, frankly, it doesn't matter what other municipality.
Yeah,
We
that's
can
what
make
we
it
want.
say whatever we want it to
Yeah,
say.
that's
We
what
can
we want.
clarify prepared, or we can word it a different way to get to the point we want, so.
Oh, one of the things we talked about, though, if you did go to that, let's say you eliminated the food thing, it's not a family place anymore. It's not a place where people can take kids. And some of the ideas, some of the more modern,
Sounds great.
but you have that, I mean,
For those of us with teenagers.
yeah.
I just think from a business, now, I've never owned and operated a restaurant or a bar, but if I were going to open a bar that had 25 seats, I'd probably want to serve food because I would hope that you'd want people to
Yeah,
come
bring in
in
any
for a
more.
reason. Like, I don't know that I've ever been to a bar that doesn't serve food. At least, like,
Nightclubs is what that's where that is probably
I
coming
mean, are
from.
there even places like that anymore that,
Clubs.
No, I don't think they exist.
I mean, I don't know.
They do exist.
It sounds like it's open to enough interpretation, though. Prepared food.
Yeah, yeah, that's what
So
I'm
I
saying.
have
We
one
di-
question. So, like, this is a beer permit. So if there's a play at the MAC and they want to serve beer for whatever price, with this, they have to also serve prepared food?
No, we're
So
going to
you'll
come.
get to that.
We're gonna
Different,
come down to
okay,
that.
because I think that's a headache.
We're getting to that.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Are we staying like we are? Does anybody want to make a specific suggestion? I'm comfortable with it as it is, but I'm one person.
Since prepared food sounds kind of, could be, yeah,
Interpretive.
yeah, I'd say leave it.
What?
I would go with leave it.
Okay. I still wouldn't mind seeing if
Prepared food is
yeah, if it's a
defined.
term of art, for restaurants versus bars. Yeah. Moving.
8250. Struck.
Yeah, so do you want to mention how 8250, the employees permits, gets covered?
It doesn't.
Doesn't? You think?
It's never been done.
It's never been done.
It's one of those when you go through this and you're like, yeah, we don't do that.
Okay.
And in looking through, I didn't see any others that did. I think at some point when there was a much tighter control, and you might have one or two places, it might have been practical. I don't know that it was ever enforced.
Okay.
But the ability to basically tell El Matate, Pizza Place, Pastaria, every employee you have that sells, delivers, serves, has to come in and get a separate permit. There's no fee associated with it. It talks about the I just lost the phrase. The beer inspector is the one that's supposed to do this, which we, again, have never had.
We don't have, yeah.
So I think it was just antiquated and
Overly burdensome.
left in for far too long.
All right, moving on to Title 8, Chapter 3, Special Beer Permits, and this is where we get into some interesting changes. Boyd, I'll send these to you. There are a couple of typos, like in 8-302, number 2, this isn't something new, this is something that's always been in there. It should have the word "of," proper in consideration of traffic interruption. There are a few places like that, but we can look at those things later. What is this one? Yeah, so most of this section is new. I put a circle around 8-303, number 3. Applications must be delivered to the town manager at the town hall at least 15 days prior to the meeting at which the beer board will convene to consider the action on the application. And that was sort of referring to what I said earlier, but I guess we've already had that discussion. That's why you did it like that.
Again,
What if you were on vacation?
Well, then there will be an acting town manager, and they can, which is one of the people that's supposed to be referred to anyway at this point.
Then Sam will do it.
No, well,
On number 5, the privilege tax, is that the $100?
yes. Which one are you on? 305?
Yeah, it's,
No.
no, 303, number 5.
Yes.
Qualified applicants for such permit will not be required to pay the privilege tax associated with business-oriented beer permits.
Yes.
Wait, what does that mean?
That's if you.
Like for a special event?
These are for nonprofits.
Walden charges $250.
That's a different fee.
That's the
ABC.
permit fee.
The permit fee,
Which
yeah.
everyone pays. Businesses also have to pay an annual privilege tax of $100. So since they are not businesses, they don't have to pay that.
Okay.
You know, I'm going to read through this just because this section is new and it'll only take a moment. You guys okay with that? Starting with 303, special occasion beer permit, single event, because this is one of the reasons we're looking at this, is so that the Playhouse, that the Mountain Education Fund, the Sports Boosters, whatever, could have events. Bona fide charitable or nonprofit organizations which have been recognized as exempt from federal taxes under Section 501C of the Internal Revenue Code may obtain a special occasion beer permit for a single event which will last no more than 2 consecutive days, provided A, such permits shall not be issued for the sale, dispensing of beer on publicly owned property without the approval of the appropriate government authority charged with the management of such property. B, if the sale, dispensing of beer covered by such a permit is to take place on private property not owned by the applicant, a written statement of approval from the owner must accompany the temporary permit application. 2, the application for such a permit must also be accompanied by the special permit application and the documents that we've talked about that have to be turned in. We just talked about the timing of turning it in, which is 3. 4, the beer board is authorized to place any and all restrictions it deems necessary on special occasion permits, but not limited to restricted hours of sale, limitations on the number of sale, locations of property, other time, place, and manner restrictions. Anyway, that one basically says the beer board can modify these and say, we don't think you should get a beer permit, which is what the beer board can do anyway, based on who knows what circumstance.
Well, you can deny it, or you also put special restrictions
Right.
on it.
5, qualified applicants, we talked about that's they don't have to pay the privilege tax. The permit holder, both the organization and its authorized applicant, are responsible for ensuring compliance with all laws and ordinances associated with the sale, dispensing, and consumption of alcohol permitted. All proceeds generated from the sale of beer pursuant to such a permit must be deposited into the permittees, the organization's monetary accounts. Documentation of such shall be subject to request and review by the beer board. And Karen, the Friends of the Library, we don't think is a 501c3. It is a 501c3? They've got all that? So, okay. Well,
Can they sell beer?
well, they'd be able to. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's been a long day.
They throw down at the library. Except as specifically, 8, except as specifically excluded by this section, all provisions of Chapter 2 of this title pertaining to hours of sale. So that's basically saying you're going to follow the law. Wanted to get down to the special occasion beer permit multiple events. This is for bona fide charitable organizations which have been recognized as exempt from federal taxes. It's the same as above, but this allows them to have a permit valid for a specified period of time, but in no case shall be for more than 1 year. It allows you to have 12 events per calendar year and no more than 2 within any calendar month. Each event shall last no more than 2 consecutive days. Such permits shall not be issued for the sale, dispensing of beer on publicly owned property without the approval of the appropriate government authority charged with management. Further down in here, it's going to specify some facilities. Matter of fact, just quickly jump down to 8-305, and then we'll come back up. Special occasion beer permits for events on town property. The beer board may consider and issue special occasion beer permits for events at the following town properties: the Mountain Arts Community Center, the amphitheater, which is the Signal Mountain Playhouse, and the Signal Mountain Library.
Is that exhaustive? Like that's the only 3? Or
That's the only
that's
3
just
we
an
really
option?
have.
Okay.
No, that's exhaustive. Yeah. We could have said this building, we could have said the gym.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, like, what if someone wants to host an event somewhere other than those 3 places?
Well, if it's private property, they could do it anyway.
But a town property, like if they were going
At a
to do,
park.
what if they wanted to do a Halloween festival at the baseball field?
They couldn't do that because it's a park and there's no alcohol, right, Boyd? Is that correct?
Yes.
Town
Well,
property?
right now, it's prohibited from everywhere but the MAC. My concern
MAC
in
used to be a
that would
school.
be, these are well-defined spaces, whereas you have Althouse Park, Marion Driver Field. Those are parks that we really can't close to the public. and control.
But could you
And-
have an event like I was thinking of when we do the, is it Labor Day, when we do the barbecue out at All House Park?
Right.
So that doesn't count, they can't serve beer and raise money for the Lions Club?
No, they can't now, and they can't under this.
Could we include that?
That's up to y'all. I would.
Yeah, I think we need to think about other places other than those three.
I think in areas like parks and playgrounds, it's going to be a lot more difficult to control and police adherence. Once alcohol is allowed in those areas.
But they have to have a permit.
But what about
So-
They're supposed to have a
Hold on.
permit.
What about a compromise for what Amy wants to do? That if you wanted to have it in one of those places, you had to close off some sort of closing off of, the venue for safety's sake anyway.
We can't, he was saying you can't close it.
Well, you could. I mean, they do it for little festivals all the time where they put up temporary fences in order to come in. I mean, it's like they do downtown at
That's so
Station Street.
expensive if it's a fundraiser. Here's where I'm going with that, is that I'm just thinking of the zombie run that I did. We did that at McCoy. That was not easy. It was not roped off. People could come in and out. Teenagers were there in and out, and it was specific to the alderman of Walden approving our event. So we are the beer board. We don't have to give a beer permit if someone comes to us and says, hey, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to have it. And we can set, okay, this.
Well, like you had the beer garden, and that was a very controlled area.
And that's
on
why
the
we were
property.
approved. So like we, as the beer
It
board,
wasn't
can
approved.
deny a beer permit. But the way this reads to me is that these are the only three places. So I'm just thinking of other people doing fundraisers, and specifically the event that I did. Like I can't do the event that I did at any of these three places, but I could do it in a big venue, at Alt House Park or somewhere. I'm just making up wherever it would be. I just think I don't want to be exclusive of other places. And I don't know if like even the parking lot, I'm thinking out of the box, like what the home run derby. What if they did just in the parking lot and they wanted to raise more money? Why couldn't they do that if we can do it at these other places? Because you're not actually in the baseball park. You're on basically our parking lot that we own. That's town property. So I just think that we might be excluding some other opportunities for people to raise funds.
We definitely are. For years, we excluded it down to just the MAC, just that building.
And we only began allowing that a few years ago. I mean, several years ago now, but that wasn't originally allowed either. And this, and you may see those other things when I put this together. I'm looking at venues that could be used for specifically, and this is going to, adult.
Go ahead, boy.
Careful.
Adult events, not entertainment, as opposed to ball fields and playgrounds and all of that. I mentally and probably philosophically separated those two types of facilities. Places where the kids usually are,
Yeah.
and places that adults could use for concerts and things like that.
But I'm thinking of even MEF, the big fundraiser. They do it on school property, so they're not able to do the Dash and Bash. But if they wanted to move it and elevate their sales, which alcohol, it just does, it just elevates. I mean, most of the money we made in the zombie run came from alcohol sales. And so that would open up the Dash and Bash to maybe relocate. Maybe they could do it at Pruitt's in the parking lot, or wherever, I don't know where. I'm thinking that this is pigeonholing us.
They could do it at Pruitt's.
And those are family and, because
Yeah.
it's.
'Cause it's private property, yeah.
But if they wanted to use a town facility, I just don't want to restrict it, and that is family and kids, but those are most festivals, serve beer at carnivals and wherever, and there's kids and adults. So I don't know that that's up to us to make that ruling on whether or not they should have it. We decide whether or not they get a beer permit. And I just don't want to exclude.
But we control our property.
Right.
What
And
about
that's
if we,
my concern.
If we add a D to that, that says, or other venues as approved by the Bureau.
Council. There we go. Thank you. That was a long way. I went way off for you to just come with that simple sentence. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I would like to do.
So I was thinking something similar, but I still think if you are going to do that, there are added, Mike's not here anymore, but there are added safety concerns that increase the town's cost and everything when you're doing something like that.
Well,
There's-
it could be.
Which is
that
why we
you
approve it or don't
require-
approve it.
Well, you require the, whoever's hosting the event to provide protection, off-duty police officers, whatever,
Well-
to be there. And, I mean, I've worked on a lot of events before too, and we would hire off-duty police officers
We
to either
did.
help with parking or to, provide security or, anything like that. So I think that there are ways that you could navigate that because I agree with Amy. I think we've got a lot of organizations up here representing all different kinds of entities that want to raise money, not just these, even though these 3 buildings could be used by different interests for a myriad things, but it's not a bad thought, really.
No, I don't think it's a bad thought, but I think it's a different beast because you've got a closed system versus kind of an open system. And I think that some considerations would need to go in as to what Mike Williams thought needed to take place around there and what staff as far as cleaning up after.
Well, the people who host the event clean up, and we have a perfect example 3 miles away at the McCoy Farms. They do fundraiser after fundraiser after fundraiser in arguably the most open space. There's no in and out, and they've done a fine job. And part of how they do that is it is specific for council. I had to go to their McCoy board meeting once a week for like 2 months leading up to the event to update them on this is the layout, this is what we're going to do, and when we could have that in place. So under D, subject to beer board approval, and we can say, okay, here's your event. This is what we need from you as a council or as the beer board. We need an outline. How many officers are you going to have? And we give them those stipulations, and either they do it or they don't, and that's how they get their beer.
But that is a very contained space with 2 entrances, and you can do ticketing and all
Oh no,
kinds
you
of-
can go right through the woods, right onto the road. We had all kinds of kids. Oh. It worked out. My point being, we're worried about alcohol sales.
Yeah.
So there are ways that we can control that,
And
but
contain
also
it.
allow other entities to raise money on town property subject to council approval. I think that's really the only safety net we need. And if there's someone coming to us with an event and we say, hey, you know what, we need to talk to the chief about this. Let him weigh in during that time, not before we add a D. I think we can add a D safely and be responsible in either giving a permit or not. It's my 2 cents.
Could I suggest if we add D and open other town facilities that we put provided that with that, that they make application 30 days in advance?
Sure.
And that way,
wrong with that.
the
Then you
police
gotta
can
time
go
it.
over.
Yeah.
And look, and when they come up, it's not a matter of what do you plan to do? We have the police, the fire, the codes folks telling us if they do this, this is what they need to do. And those could be the stipulations, but that's gonna take longer than just your normal
Yeah.
application.
And do we have to take a look at other code, other places where it talks about no alcohol in our parks?
Yes.
Because that's in other places already.
That's, I mean, it's.
Sure, but it would be a no if that, you know what I mean? So they
Yeah.
can come and ask us and we can say, no, it's a
Yeah.
park.
We should have to be careful that what comes out of this is people thinking, you can drink in the parks now, because that's.
That's exactly what I'm worried about. But, I mean, it's
But you
manageable.
can drink in a
do it.
parking lot.
I think, you have to stipulate, specific to events that are, that serve a certain purpose.
Title 11 is municipal violations. Chapter 2 is alcohol. And there are 2 sections, and I don't know how long these typos have been in there, but 201 is processing alcoholic beverages on town property.
Processing.
Well, that's from the
Is
Stills
that like
days.
moonshine?
It shall be unlawful for any person to possess a can, bottle, or container of beer, wine, or any other alcoholic beverage, otherwise, whether open or unopened, in or on any town of Signal Mountain property, except for any permitted usage within the Mountain Arts Community Center. Then it goes on to say, the next section, it shall be unlawful for any person to drink, consume, or have an open can or of, let me get my bifocals right.
You could fix that with accept my
Can
special
or
permit, though,
bottle
right?
of beer on any sidewalk, public park, public school ground, or other public place. So both of these are gonna have to be, and that's, I'm saying it can't, but it's pretty specific in both of these that whether it's town property or it's just public space, you can't have alcohol. So
Yes, we're gonna-
they'll have to be significantly changed.
Last thing I'll say, to give another example, like if they brought back Hodgepodge, how great would it be to have the tap wagon there? And as it stands right now, they can't. So I think we should add
I
that,
think that, agree.
because I would love to see that come back and let it flourish.
Can you come up with some wording that,
If
I'm concerned.
If I can't, he can.
He can. I'm concerned about perimeter control on these things as well, for more reasons than just beer, for just the state of the society we live in now. I think those things are important.
Well, the,
Crowd control, perimeter control, those kinds of things.
and there's, and again, it sounds like I'm arguing, and I'm not, I want to make sure we do it right, but, you know, there's a reason MEF can't have alcohol on school property. It's government property, and it's an exposure, and we have to think about all of those things if we're going to move beyond that and allow it. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to go into it with a, wide open attitude, but I mean, think about crowd control. Look at homecoming. Starts here, I mean, let's be real about what the parents are doing. I mean, there's alcohol all up and down, in and out of Pruitt's, and we're not crowd controlling any of that. At least if we've given a beer permit, we can have a little more structure and regulation around it. Just saying.
I didn't know about the alcohol. No.
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to minimize your
Yeah.
concern, but I'm just saying that I think that there's a happy medium, and I think that adding that and being responsible council members on when and how we give out a beer permit and what that looks like will be a benefit to our community versus a hindrance.
There is a scale of event that we don't have staff to handle. I mean, just police.
The event people handle that,
Sure.
and they only get their beer permit if they are handling it.
And they
But
followed all
then
the
that
rules.
needs to be spelled out, I guess, is what I'm getting at. But I see what you're saying, though. I mean, we could deal with that each time, but we aren't, that's not our area of expertise as to like what is needed for those things. The staff doesn't have that, we don't have that.
Well,
There-
in these venues, we can deal with it. Anything beyond that, that's why I'm saying we need extra time to be able to fully consider what the ramifications will be, what the problems might be, how we think they need to address those and get all that in place. And if we go down that route, we need at least 30 days notice
I'm
to
fine
do
with
all
that,
that.
yeah.
And if we can provide a reasonable scenario where it could be done safely, then you guys can take that into
Yeah, and I think we
consideration.
could
If-
consult with the city
if-
of Chattanooga and say, like, not that we'd have anything as big as Riverbend or anything like that, but, for crowd control, how many police officers are on duty per, the number of people you're expecting to show up at an event?
Well, that's
Those are the-
less relevant than how many police officers we have.
Yeah,
Really, and-
But
I
you
mean, I'm not-
hire
I'm not
them, we
trying to say
hired them. We didn't use Signal Mountain Police. So part of the contract, when we did an event, was we're expecting X amount of people, so say 1,000, and we need this many officers, and then because it was somewhat of a school event, we had it very clearly blocked off where alcohol is, so we had a police officer that we hired that sat at the front and checked IDs, we had a police officer in the back, and that was all That's the event's responsibility. And the only way that event was happening is if we said, we're hiring X number of police officers. So it shouldn't be a burden on Signal Mountain other than after they leave.
When they're all driving away, yeah.
No, they're Ubering, because we're all
Ubering, that's
responsible.
right. That's
Uber.
right.
All right, anything else on that section?
Amy, do you still have a copy of the agreement that you took out with McCoy?
Probably, it'd be real easy just to go to McCoy
That'd be
and
easy,
see how
okay.
they do it. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got that down. It's a well-oiled machine.
Okay.
All right, so we jumped through 8-305, and it mentions those places, and so we've discussed some.
Oh, so are we adding D? Do we need to vote on that?
Well, we aren't voting on anything today, but they can bring back to us some wording that we can look at.
So is the direction of this council to add a D?
Yeah.
See a lot of nodding heads.
Provided
so,
that.
yeah, Provided that,
Mhm.
yeah.
And then the 30 days as well.
Yep.
The other stuff just is what has to be in there, like 8-3052A, the $1 million liability coverage. And we have correct me if I'm wrong, Boyd, we have the ability for nonprofits that are having an event to purchase a rider.
TML through the National League of Cities has available coverage that individuals or organizations can participate in. We would have to sign up with them so that we would be in their system, and then an organization or individual could go in, put the information in, they immediately get a quote on what the coverage would be. Alcohol liability is a specific option, and that's why I put in here that it has to be included in the coverage, because most straight liability coverage does not include that. So they can go in, put the information in, make sure it includes alcohol liability, immediately get a quote, and literally purchase and pay for it then. When it goes through, they will have our code to put in, and then the insurer automatically sends us the certificate of insurance naming us as an additional insured. We don't even have to depend on the organization or person to give us that. It comes straight to us. So they could get it elsewhere, but we can sign up for that and get that mechanism in place so that anybody wants to do it, they have a direct point of contact for getting it.
Any idea on cost?
It would depend on the event, the circumstances, all of that. They're going to want to know how many people, what type of event it is. It's no different than any other event insurance in that regard. It's going to depend on what exactly you're doing and what their exposure might be.
It might be good if we could find out what some of the parameters are in that, though, just so people know, get an idea.
Can I go back for a second? I was just reading on in 8-304 on number 4. You kind of have a disclaimer right here that says the beer board is authorized to place any and all restrictions it deems necessary on special occasion permits, including but not limited to restricted hour of sale, limitations, on the sale, location, stations of the property or other time, place, and manner of restrictions, considering traffic interruption, public safety, blah, blah, blah. Like that kind of, that whole statement right there sort of gives.
That's D.
That is D.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way.
Yeah.
Like some of the language in there really does sort of.
Well, that's for the special permits, period.
Yes.
So, and that does apply to
And that
any
would
that
apply
apply for
in the-
on town property.
If it were on town property, like I think that disclaimer right there kind of encapsulates some of the concerns that we're all, talking about.
Yeah, it speaks to it.
Yeah.
Those are the things that we need to nail down in any given situation and determine what those limitations, restrictions, or
Yes.
provisions might need to be.
Yes.
Yep.
you guys catch 8-306? Events not subject to permit. Any event which is catered and the caterer has a valid TABC license to serve alcohol is not required to obtain a special occasion beer permit. The beer board does not require notice of such events, and the event coordinator must furnish to the town a copy of the notice of catered event form, which the caterer submits to TABC no later than 5 days prior to the event. Event coordinators holding events at town properties outlined in section 8-305 are required to fulfill and or comply with all the provisions of that section. That's a wonderful clause, I think, that allows people, if you're going to have a catered event and have a bartender, you have way fewer hoops to jump through because it's all covered. Am I reading that correctly?
It's incentive, that's good. Way to do that too.
And that's it.
All right.
Tentative agenda, September 23rd.
Right now, we are wide open, not knowing where this would go. I don't anticipate, unless you direct otherwise, that this actually comes in the form of a ordinance ready for.
Not yet, no. But could we have
We
those
can have
couple
it.
of things we asked,
Yes.
for next time? Is that reasonable?
Oh, yeah. We'll do that, and basically, all of the changes, the old language will be removed. I'll try to clean it up, so when you look at it, it will pretty much be in the form that it would take. And
Will we be able to process beer on town property or not?
Come on. If it's
you
going to
know,
raise money.
technically, once you drink it.
Yeah.
So this is processing, I guess, okay. All right,
You
any other
started
business?
that, just for the record.
Any other business?
Yep.
Anything? We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Well, you come, I know you're different since the call from my bill. Jeremy, how are you? Good to see you. It's been a while. Good evening. Is that what we were talking about?
Well, it's going to be up to whoever's holding the event to provide that insurance, not the town.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we just have a way, we can sign up for a program that they can use to buy the coverage.
Okay.
We're not paying for it.
Okay, I got a little bit lost there.
And they'll have to be at least $1 million